Welcome to a very special Pride edition of the Grow Your Occupancy podcast. I'm Julie Podewitz, CEO and founder, and today I welcome my very favorite person, my daughter Ava Podewitz, to the show. Welcome, Ava.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Ava Podewitz.
We normally give a little bio, right, when we're doing our Grow Your Occupancy podcast. So let's just dive right in. And do you mind sharing, since this is a Pride Month, would you mind sharing your story with everybody?
Oh, my story. Like specifically my coming out story or something like that? Okay. Well, when I was young, like elementary school, middle school, being gay wasn't necessarily something that ever crossed my mind. I was a pretty busy kid. I did a lot of theater and dance and all that sort of thing. Also, I just like really enjoyed school. I was always going. So I didn't really think about that. And now I don't think a lot of kids do unless it's like a very obvious thing from when you're young. I know some people, like, oh, I knew I was gay when I was 5. But other than that, most people don't. So it wasn't really something that I was aware of until I got into high school. This thought sort of entered my mind. And I always thought, like, other people are gay and like amazing for them, but that's not me, right? I'm very girly, I'm very feminine. I had really great connections with men when I was younger, or boys. So I was like, that's fine for me. And then there was this one girl who was in my history class my freshman year, and I was like, I really want to be friends with her. I really want to get to know her. And then I sort of started realizing, like, oh, I think this might be like a crush. But I was like, oh, it's probably just one person, like the one exception to the rule. But I did a lot of soul searching, and it really took most of my high school to like understand that I was gay. And it's still a journey, and in my opinion, sexuality is fluid, it's ever changing. I don't think anyone could say anything for certain, but I pretty much label myself as lesbian or just gay, queer, that sort of thing. I came out when I got into my first relationship halfway through my senior year, so I was 17. And so yeah, this would be my second Pride Month out. I came out like a year and a half ago to my parents, so that just meant to everybody. I had come out to some of my friends starting my sophomore year of high school. So it was a process, and it still is. But because I'm very young, I'm not even 19 yet. But that is the journey that I've been on so far.
So, what has been for you the most positive aspect of all of this, of your journey of coming out?
I just say the support from people every time, especially at the beginning of me coming out. Now when I tell people, I don't really care what they say, but especially at the beginning and when I was in my first relationship, just the overwhelming support that I got from people, even people that I knew were highly religious or maybe not necessarily 100% supportive, and you can only tell those people so much. But I have had very few like negative reactions to being gay, and granted, that is has a lot to do with my privilege. Like I said, I'm very feminine. People, I don't think, feel threatened by my presence in the world in that way, but it's still been a very like positive reaction from most people that I tell, and to this day still very positive. And I think I surround myself with people that I know will probably be supportive.
Ava, you've mentioned this a couple of times because I feel like I know you pretty well as your mom, that something that you mentioned just now, where you are feminine, you don't present, if you will, as your typical or stereotypical gay woman, and that has perhaps been a factor in the positiveness or you coming out and the acceptance? It's tough to know because, of course, your journey is unique, but that is just fascinating to me because you had mentioned something when you were still in high school and coming out to your friends and overwhelmingly it was positive with a couple exceptions. But you said, well, in a lot of cases, I'm the first gay person they know because we live in, I would say, very overwhelmingly, conservative kind of region of the U.S. and that you are maybe safe for them to know, like you're a safe gay person. And I mean, yeah, talk a little bit about that because I have a lot of feelings about that.
I do too, definitely. First of all, um, like specifically gender expression, I think that gender expression is something that a lot of people have trouble with. Just visually looking at somebody or knowing like what their identity is. Maybe it's a trans person or a non-binary person. People feel very threatened by gender, and I mean, you can kind of figure out why religion, especially Christianity, promotes this like very stereotypical man and woman relationship. So when there's this in between that people haven't considered, I think they feel scared or threatened. So me, I'm comfortable in my gender identity. I'm like very feminine, but I also sort of just like check a lot of those like feminine boxes. I'm very much so when I like wearing dresses and skirts, I was like wearing pants and like whatever. But I think people just feel very threatened by the gender identity in that way. Also, people have a lot of trouble with just in-betweens in general. A lot of people say if you're gay, pick a side. Bisexuality, pansexuality, and other sexualities are very invalidated. And I think like me coming out as gay to people, though I don't really owe anybody any explanation on who I may be attracted to. I think if people hear the word lesbian, or hear the word gay man, they feel like pretty comfortable in that. Because that is kind of the first sort of round of gayness that they've been aware of in the past few decades. And this new wave of my generation who's like, well, I may be attracted to somebody who's non-binary, or I may be non-binary and attracted to this group of people. People are very scared of that sort of in-betweenness. So when I'm white, I'm female and identify as female, and say I'm gay, it's like a pretty safe box to be in, compared to what a lot of people go through. But we have to like keep elevating their voices even more than mine, because that is the next generation that people need to be aware of. And we need to like support them because they're facing the most discrimination. I'm probably like in the most privileged area of gay people.
Very interesting. And how I should unpack it is in my mind, because I abhor prejudice of any kind or hatred of any kind of another human being or anybody of anything. But and it's so confounding, and it always has been confounding for me why one's sexuality or gender identity, who they love, matters. It matters, of course, because it matters in humanity, but why would one's partner or choices, as long as it's ethical and legal, above 18, and why would that bother anybody? But it does more than bother, and I don't like to even think about it, but it happens and it still does, and it is like the issue of the day with Florida's Don't Say Gay and Texas. We love a lot of people in Texas, got a lot of colleagues in Texas, but some of the laws and lawmakers or the things that they're, throwing out around trans and I mean, yeah. So knowing someone like you who's LGBTQ and safe, maybe, although it's not your burden to bear, maybe that's it's such a positive for people who were fearful or maybe brought up a certain way, and that gay is bad, or whatever. And oh wow, I know Ava, she's cool.
Right.
It's like you can just I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it's like, again, it's not your burden to bear, but you use that word privilege, and I'm certain you're privileged in many ways, but in the spectrum of what we're talking about, you can get away with, if you will, something, get away with being gay in an atmosphere that potentially might be threatening. I've heard many times that people say, I have to come out every day. I have to assess the room, in a professional setting, in a casual setting. Is this okay for me to be me? And that's got to be stressful.
Yeah, definitely. Like assessing the situation. I typically take a little bit before I like come out to people, and really only need to come out to people that I'm close with. But um and the like same thing comes up if you identify as non-binary and you want people to use your correct pronouns right off the bat, immediately you have to come out to people, and it can be scary, like the reaction that you may get. So I have the privilege also of not necessarily having to tell people unless I
Mm-hmm.
choose to. Um, so people just pretty much assume that I'm straight. That's the whole thing here. Is typically I've had very few people be like, "Oh yeah, I knew you were gay since the moment I met you." Most people are like, "Oh, I thought you were straight," and it's really cool, like an ally or something. And then I knew that you were gay. So I I I have a lot of privilege in that way as well.
And does that bother you at all if someone says, "Oh, I thought you were straight"?
No, because I definitely do look straight, like what you would think is straight. So no, it doesn't bother me. People make their assumptions. They assume someone's gay and they're not. That's why I try not to assume about anybody. Um, I have quite a few coworkers that I learned recently, that are gay, and I was like, well, like I might have had a thought, but I don't like to assume. I don't like to assume it about anybody until they tell me.
Well, it's something I've always admired about you. You're extremely accepting, you're non-judgmental, and not assuming, coincidentally, is something we teach in sales. But don't assume things about your customer. And that's a very good rule of thumb, period. Like, let's not jump to assumes or jump to a conclusion, especially if those conclusions are coupled with a negative baked in perception. Like
Right.
this, you be you, right?
Right.
What about the most like challenging aspect, or maybe that you've experienced or that one of your peers have experienced about coming out or
Um,
being themselves?
well, first of all, coming out just in itself is very scary. Um, and I was fortunate because I knew that when I would come out, I would be met with very loving and accepting parents, family members, all that sort of thing, even my grandparents. Your mom moved churches because her old church said that they wouldn't accept gay people, allow gay marriage. So she moved churches after being Methodist for like her entire life. So I know I'd be met with that sort of support and love, but it's still very scary. And I think because there's such a stigma around coming out, which hopefully we can work through as a society, that's like a big goal. But there's just such a huge stigma. The default is straight. So people assume that you're straight. And um, I even assumed I was straight. So I sort of felt like maybe I was going to let some family members down in this really weird way, to be like, oh, well, we expected Ava maybe to marry a man and have kids, and you sort of like let down this stereotype. And I'm an only child, so there's not a lot of Podewitzes that exist, and maybe the bloodline is here. I don't know. Like I can't say like what that future holds, but it sort of shifts what you think is like the normal family, like we have a pretty me and my dad have a normal type of family, so it sort of brings in this like totally different aspect. As far as other people go, I've heard a lot of stories from gay friends and people that I know. um Blatant hate crimes, like uses of slurs against people, just making fun of people for the way that they dress or the way that they act. Uh, Even just like a couple of like legitimate violent acts. No one that has gone like hurt, but like physical threats or
Mm.
I don't know. I'm trying to think. Um, just like some like general bullying, and it's like especially uh for people that present in like a more, you would think, like stereotypical gay way,
Yeah.
that are going to be a bigger target because people make those assumptions right off the bat. Oh, he's feminine, so he's gay, and that's a perfect target for me. Probably because they're very insecure in themselves. I think you have to be highly insecure
Mhm.
to not only hate gay people, but like go and target them. Um,
Mhm.
but I've heard of so many things. Of course, then you see things on social media. Um, People are still getting killed to this day for being gay, and that's why we still have pride. Um, and we're getting targeted in the legislature. Just when you thought gay people have the right to get married, now Florida legislature wants to take away a teacher's right to talk about LGBTQ media in schools, which is incredibly damaging. When all you want to do is protect children and bring them up in a safe environment, to like take away some basic rights. It's just so twisted. I can't even wrap my head around it, to think that children who just need love and support and someone to listen to them could have that taken away and have their teacher fired or have their parents notified. It's a breach of privacy. I wouldn't have wanted people to know that I was gay before I was comfortable in telling them. Like
Mhm.
I said, it took me years to sort of like figure out what was going on. And I think like if I had been exposed too early, that it would have been really, really damaging. So we just have to think like, uh, at the end of the day, don't we want to protect children? We talk about, and I know that this is not about being gay, but about like shootings and gun control in that way. All we want to do is protect children. Don't say gay bill. We think it's protecting children, but it's not, because you obviously don't want to bring up sexual things in front of children. I think that that's just a standard, and if someone is, that's gross. But being gay is not being sexual, it's an identity, and that's another assumption that we have in society, is we think
Mhm.
gay equals gay sex, or gay equals some sort of conversation like that. But it's not. It's about who you love, and what your identity is personally. So there's a lot of stigmas to be broken, I think, before we can even like go into a lot of things. But that was a whole tangent there. I think that answered whatever question that you asked first.
No, it's really insightful, and being who you are, in this case, gay, trans, LGBTQ,
Mhm.
or heterosexual, or asexual,
Mhm.
is an identity. It's who we are. It's a private thing that, uh, I'm heterosexual, but I don't talk about it to people, because it's really, I don't feel anyone's business. But because that's the kind of that's the and the higher percentage of people, right, are, like you said, that's sort of the fallback. Of course, you're born female and you do these things, and you're heterosexual, and or you're born male and you do, right? But the coming out is really all about being oneself. And you bring up a good point about this, the sex part of the equation, and being gay or being trans, it is who we are, or being heterosexual. It's just, who we are. And I don't want to hear about anybody's private life, and I don't think anyone needs to talk about that. And you're out to other people other than their very inner trusted circle. And being gay or being trans isn't, or talking about it is just like saying you're Black, or you're Caucasian, or you're Asian, or you're American Indian, or you're, from wherever you are from. Is
Right.
Just a fact, right? It's part of who we are. Or you've got Finnish heritage, or, Scottish heritage, German heritage, right? And yeah, there's this fear of some kind, and I'm not sure. And I was going to ask you, what do you think people are afraid of?
I wish I had like a total answer. I think people, when you are taught one thing for a certain amount of time, hearing another perspective can be a little bit scary, especially in the religious sense. If you think that gay people are gonna go to hell for being gay, and be like, it's your job to convert them to Christianity, make them be straight. I think there's that sort of aspect. I think when we are ignorant, then we're fearful of people that are different than us. When we don't take the time to learn and educate ourselves about other people, we can be quite fearful of those people. One of my best friends, she's Black, and we're watching there's like a Netflix sort of series about the Central Park Five, and they go, and also another documentary, it's Reversing Roe. They both go into this whole criminalization of Black people, and why the government sort of went into that to perpetuate whatever they needed to propel a campaign, or fill up prisons or whatever. So now we think that Black people are all criminals, when in reality it's either something perpetuated by the media, or it's about poverty, and we don't even take the time to understand, okay, well, let's look back in history and let's educate ourselves, and then realize that it's not Black people who are inherently violent, but it's all of these factors that make us believe that they are. So we need to listen to stories, because if you're just automatically fearful of people because of assumptions that you make based on things that you're fed that are false, you're automatically going to be afraid. But if you educate yourselves on different communities, you'll learn that of stereotypes are what's perpetuated, and most people don't meet that. People go beyond all of the assumptions that we make, so far beyond, and that's what humanity is. And that's why I try not to judge people based on those facts, because we're so much more than our identities. You want to accept someone's identity and then get to know them for their personality, the things that they love, who they are. And maybe you don't like somebody because they annoy you, but at least you took the time to get to know them. You don't automatically hate somebody because of their race, or their religion, or their sexual identity, any of those things. You don't automatically hate somebody just based on the assumptions that you make based on things that we just learned from living in this country and our society. I think that made sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. I have always thought that the world needs more people like you, and that may be because you're my daughter, but I don't know. I'm even if I wasn't your mom, I would say we need more Ava, but there is only one. And I am very, very lucky to be your mom. And I'm very proud of you
Thank you.
for everything you've accomplished and more importantly, for who you are as a person. And I appreciate you being a guest on the special Pride Month
Yes.
edition of Grow Your Occupancy podcast.
Right. Thank you. It was fun to talk about this a little bit today.